Coogs House. The Houston Cougars have found their man. Eddie Nunez, come on down.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. We're making us your first listen each and every day. If you want to join the conversation but don't know what to say, tell us in the comments down below what kind of salsa you put on your enchiladas and why it potentially is that green-red Xmas combo, right? You get a little bit of both. Why choose? That's what we go with around here anyway. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And we're talking enchiladas and things like that because I've got New Mexico in the mind because Eddie Nunez is officially the new AD at the University of Houston. I want to talk a lot about this hire and kind of how things are going, how things look to go with it for sure. Now, I have to say that, obviously, we're working through more information over the weekend and things like that, and there were all kinds of different reactions. But we've got to start with who is Eddie Nunez. Eddie, if you want to go far back, played junior college basketball and then finished his basketball playing career at the University of Florida under head coach Billy Donovan. I say to say that throughout this process, I've seen that Houston men's basketball is the marquee program. Everyone always wanted to know what Sampson thought about different things. Different reporting after the hire was also about Sampson knowing and what he liked and didn't like, whatever, trying to infer things. While some of that may be inferencing, I will say that the men's basketball program, I think, had to have signed off on this hire, and him being a basketball guy, I'm sure, had some role in that. That's why that continues to be as significant as it is. Most recently, he's been at New Mexico as the athletic director from 2017 to 2014. For the 14 years before that, he was in a handful of different roles at LSU in marketing and fundraising. The last few years, he was there as the deputy AD, also known as the assistant, second in command there at LSU. Big deal, right? Marketing, fundraising, being in charge of an SEC program. He did all of that as well. If you go further back in his resume, he also spent some time in various fundraising roles at Vanderbilt, another SEC school. Along the way, throughout all of that, he's been on multiple leadership boards at the FBS kind of world of things. He's been at the NCAA, especially involved with different aspects of March Madness, kind of involved in the boards having to do with that, and also had leadership roles in the Mountain West Conference while he was at New Mexico. Now, I think a lot's been made because, frankly, a single screenshot of a single Excel doc that was put together by, one of the many nameless and faceless on Twitter, talked about his, potential contributions and things like that to the other department at New Mexico. I think it bears mentioning we should go back to when he got to New Mexico because people are worried about what those numbers look like. But when you go back and look at things and add some context to his time in New Mexico, and you kind of get a better picture as to why contributions were so low early on and why numbers get refigured. So when Eddie Nunez got to New Mexico, they were in the middle of a giant scandal, right? And it was involved in money and books and the previous athletic director. And essentially, I should point out that in 2023, the previous athletic director was found innocent on all charges that preceded Eddie Nunez at New Mexico. But there was charges involving corruption, mixing up of books, and then the biggest one, the one that went all the way to 2023, again, he found innocent, but did take that long, was the idea there was embezzling of funds donated to the athletic department used ultimately, it sounds like, to send the athletic director on lavish golf trips with different donors and things like that. It does sound like things like paying for trips were involved in athletic fundraising prior to 2017. So like a lot of different things like experiential donations were a big part of that. Some of the books then get a little fuzzy because of that. And so there was a giant redo or overhaul in how New Mexico did their books. sports-specific things were separated and done a little bit differently. Athletic contributions, just kind of blanket athletic department, were kept in one place. Certain types of athletic contributions were dropped to make sure this wouldn't happen again. Nunez came in and cleaned up all of that. I DM back and forth with a couple different people there in Albuquerque, kind of keeping track of athletics and the report on athletics. And I have to point out one guy who admittedly runs more of the blogosphere kind of stuff, said that he did not think it could have been a worse situation to walk into in 2017, right? Like the stress about like, can we even be in a Division I athletic program at New Mexico at the time were very real. Since then, okay, he's been a money raiser. I know that people worry about like New Mexico's money and this, that, and the thing, but it's a group of 5 program. And I'd point out his NIL ventures have been successful. In 2023-24, the academic school year last year, he, at the Lobo Club, which again, organized and restructured by Eddie Nunez, raised $9.7 million. Year before, $9.3 million, 8.5 in 22, 6 million in 21, 4.5 in 20. I'm not great at math, but if you look at that from 2020 to 2024, that's a pretty steep trajectory, more than doubling in 4 years at the Lobo Club. NIL kind of stuff, I think has a lot of people worried about, what does NIL mean? The future of this, I would point out that they did raise over $5 million in NIL stuff last year at New Mexico. Extrapolate that to what like a Big 12 program in a city like Houston can do with the work that like Landon Gosling and Lincoln Coogs are doing. I think that only speaks to more growth. I also think that the combination of those, I think, is important. He did both things very well relative to what New Mexico has working. When you, again, extrapolate that to Big 12, to Houston, etc., the sky could very well be the limit. He also has experience in fundraising at LSU and at Vanderbilt. We mentioned that, yes, that was before 2017, but raising money is raising money at some degree, right? And finding ways to tap into the Houston market. Whispers, what he did at LSU, they tap into Houston all the time, right? Shaking hands and kissing babies. He's done that in the city of Houston before, right? Other kinds of ways to make money. The 2023 gala they do to raise money at the start of the year for the football season raised $800,000. I should report that the 2024 gala was held Saturday night, shortly after he'd been hired to Houston, so it doesn't actually fall under his purview. It raised over $1 million, right? He had everything to do with the event except the event itself because he wasn't actually there for it, right? He had just taken the job at Houston, but it raised over $1 million. Previous high before 2023 was $585,000. He almost doubled it, right, by 2024. Experience in marketing, I'd also say, is a big part of his resume and what he brings. One of the biggest complaints I think we have about Houston athletics is this idea of like carpe diem. Why don't they just seize the moment when these things happen? Well, he's got experience doing that at the SEC at the top of the line. And again, does marketing change somebody in 2017 and 2024? Yes. Are the basic ideas the same? Yes. If Houston's marketing department was as successful in 2024 as LSU's was in 2017, I'd be okay with it. There are things about this that carry over, and I think that it's interesting to see them on his resume. If anything, the flaw in his resume is he hired, when he got to New Mexico in 2017 and they were in that rough spot, some coaches that didn't work out. That every athletic director has a flaw. They're all going to have flaws, and so they just do. They're people, right? But at Houston, I would point out a lot of the big hires are kind of done for him. He's got kind of half of his athletic staff already hired, right? They just hired Willie Fritz. We all like that hire, moving in the right direction in football. Men's basketball, obviously Kelvin Sampson, that's top tier in the country. It's a Hall of Famer. You can't do better than that, right? I would point out that that's the 2 revenue sports, and they're both set. But women's volleyball, obviously, has a pretty good team going. They went Sweet 16 last year. Track and field, you got like Hall of Fame Olympian Carl Lewis from the whole show, and get 2 guys in the finals, the 4x1. I mean, pretty strong as well. Swimming and diving is a very strong program also, that they've got these coaches set in place. So while we have our criticisms of a handful of other programs and want to see them held accountable, and that might be a weakness on his resume, if you're going to pick a weakness on an athletic director's resume relative to kind of the job itself, Houston as a specific location is doing pretty well in regards to who their coaches are. As far as about half of the athletic department looks to be in a pretty strong position. His criticism in New Mexico, for the folks like wondering and inquiring, you can look it up as well. I'm not saying you can't, but people argued he hired a lot of people that had like university ties instead of maybe going outside and looking for a bigger, stronger candidate. Again, he came into the university at a tough time. I think that's fair. He also was involved in hiring Bronco Mendenhall to the football staff, who has not coached a game yet in New Mexico, but was considered a fairly splashy hire for what they were doing. Now, I want to talk more about what this hire says about Houston, this position, and things moving forward in a minute. But let's be honest, we're all trying to win games these days. And if you're trying to win games, you got to head over to FanDuel.com. Now, you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel across the Locked On family. However, it's America's #1 sportsbook, and we all have a little bit different thing for you now. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Yes, you heard that right. A $5 bet can get you 3 weeks of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. There's a YouTube-based TV plan. You're able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game wherever you stay. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel it at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and download America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel.com/locked-on to download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, so I think a lot of people talked about Eddie, and people have like already made these preconceived notions. The guy probably just flew to campus in the last 12 minutes, right? Like this has not been a long time cooking or anything like that. But I do think it's worth noting before we go any farther what this hire says about Houston and their process. And a lot of people say, well, like, we should be getting the best in this and they want to go get like take Florida or take Alabama or take whomever's AD. And that's great on paper. But with the exception of about 12 programs in the entire country, and we're working to get there eventually, we're just not there yet. With the exception of that dozen or less programs across the country, Power 4 programs searching for an athletic director, we're always going to get one of 3 guys. A group of 5 guys moving up to the Power 4, an assistant at a Power 5 making the leap to being a head or an athletic director, or someone falling back from a bigger program, right? Someone, let's say, a failed AD that took a couple years off and is restarting their career or whatever. Everyone that you have heard or read about from the university and talking about Eddie Nunez feels like he correctly checks off 2 of those 3 boxes because they cite both his time at New Mexico and his time at LSU, right? I want to take out one quote from Dr. Rena Couture, president of the University of Houston, to Paper City Magazine, because I think it speaks volumes as to where she would like to see athletics headed in the rest of her time at the U of H. She said, quote, "I want to see our budget double for athletics. That's not something we're going to be able to do on the backs of students. We won't do that. It's not something we can do with just our donors and alumni. It's something that's going to take tapping into all the corporate resources out there in Houston and nationally, building bridges in the city, the likes of which we haven't been built before, crafting unique partnerships and being creative and innovative and never giving up. I believe Eddie can get us there, take us to a new level at a critical time in the history of college athletics and this university." So she understands how far back and how far behind Houston is. Houston is operating with the smallest budget in the entire Power 4. So doubling it, while that feels like a large step, is kind of just getting into the game, right? It is a big step, but it's also like just thing we need to do to maintain being competitive. What Kelvin Sampson has done, what David Rear has done, what Carl Lewis has done, what the successful coaches have done with the budget they've got is nothing short of miraculous, right? Truthfully, they're all walking in the room with one hand tied behind their back and winning anyway, right? So Houston sees that this is a problem. We hear it from Couture's mouth here, right? The other thing I think is interesting is we see from both Couture and Fertitta at different points. I don't need to read a bunch of quotes because aren't a time frame here, but it was very important, especially to Fertitta, that he has been an athletic director before he's been a boss, right? That 7-year window as an AD was clearly important in making this hire as opposed to an assistant AD from another Power 4 school, right? They didn't want to risk it on an assistant and then it not pan out, right? And I understand that it feels safe, but think about how many offensive coordinators or defensive coordinators you've seen flop as a head coach, right? How many guys that sit in the first chair as an assistant under the head basketball coach end up flopping as hoops coaches later, right? I understand it's not exactly a one-to-one thing there, but being a great assistant, serving a great role does not necessarily mean you're going to be great when you're in charge of something. There's other ways to figure it out, but one of the key finalists in this search was an assistant at an SEC school. And I think it's worth pointing out he's been in the finalists for a couple of AD jobs now and has not gotten them, right? Sometimes great assistants are just that, great assistants, and there's nothing wrong with that. But Houston couldn't risk it. They want to make sure at this point in the university's history, and this point in college athletics, they had the right guy, a guy that could lead, a person, I should say, that would lead, right? And I think that speaks volumes to how much they understand this spot. Yes, Houston is in the Power 4. Houston got in right before the buzzer, it feels like, as far as the entirety of college athletics changing, because the Power 4 could very well be all that's left in revenue athletics in the very near future. However, we also understand that by 2031, with new TV contracts in the Big 12, or shortly thereafter in the early 2030s, as the SEC and Big 10 start to get into their new deals in the mid 2030s, all of college athletics could change, like very dramatically. And it might even be before that, honestly, in anticipation of that, right? So with all of college athletics changing, Houston had to make sure they had an AD in the present tense that was ready for that future. They couldn't take a risk on someone who hadn't done it before. And that 7-year window at New Mexico as an athletic director was a big deal. That NIL program, that Lobo Club going up in money every single year and more than doubling since 2020, right? Those galas that raise $800 and $1 million, those things were important because they tied to his name when he's in charge of them. Not peripherally, not tied to, not connected to, not we think this fell under his umbrella. He was the AD when it happened. And it's really, really important, right? I also think it's worth pointing out he has been kind of the front runner the whole time, and we got the same kind of vibe in reading what Couture and Tillman have said in a number of different press releases and articles, stuff like that, since when they basically said that he walked in that very first meeting with this very fire in the belly, coaches fire in the belly, athletes fire in the belly, whatever, about what he could transform the University of Houston into. Now, as of Monday, Monday morning, I should say, we've not heard this plan laid out. I don't mean to say that I've got some background information that you don't have or whatever, but whatever plan he was laying out was clearly invigorating to both Couture and Fertitta, right? I think that him being the front runner the whole time is because he came out the gates with that, right? They interviewed other people, they whittled and whittled and whittled and put it down, but eventually they went back to and got their guy that said all those things. And so I can't wait to hear and read about what those things are, right? If you're out there, Eddie Nunez, wondering where you can go talk about them, let me recommend Locked on Cougs, right? But I do think that it means that whatever that first impression was really, really impressive because he came out the gates very early. I think Duarte had it in mid-July. This guy is someone to keep an eye on, right? And he just never went away. He was a finalist the whole way through. I'm happy they went with him over a handful of other candidates. I obviously, when we got down to the Final Four the other day, said they really couldn't go wrong. Everyone's got flaws, but these guys, these people, one being Kelly Zinn, so I shouldn't say guys, but these people all had something they did well. But man, I feel confident, especially and going back and forth with a couple folks in Albuquerque now. I feel confident about what we're doing here. Obviously, it has to be done, right? Potential doesn't mean anything, just means you haven't done it yet. But I think there's things that can be ways this goes well, I should say, that are all very possible. Now, there are also ways this goes not so well, and I don't want to just bypass those. And so I want to talk in the final segment about some potential fears, why they may be relevant, why they may not be, because I don't want to act like they're completely out of thin air, and I don't want to not address them. But first, I know, I mean, I got a little fender bender the other day, picking up food, backing out a parking spot, bang, bang, right? I need to fix that back bumper. I still need to do that. And where I'm going to go do that is I'm going to talk to folks at the shop. I'm going to go to ebaymotors.com to find the part because passion over patience are the winning formula, whether it's championships or keeping your ride or die alive. Up there's Doug. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level up to peak performance, whether it's superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, or more, whether it's speed, power, or style. eBay Motors has got you covered. Over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You always find exactly what you're looking for, and with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your parts guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need, the price you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins to keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. That's why it's only exclusive supply eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. All right, now, while I don't think the criticism flying around about contributions and things like that is a very valid concern when it comes to Eddie Nunez, because like I said before, they were in as bad a spot as you could be in college athletics when he got there, and he's got them making money. They're in the green now, and they've redone how they calculate books and where they look for things and how they allocate what goes where, and so that shapes some of it as well. I do think there are other reasons to be worried about this. And I was talking to folks, I think it was a group message. Anyway, my one big, the criticism I understand, right? I should say it's not really my criticism, but the criticism I understand about this hire is that it was exceedingly safe. It was a guy who is very respected and has been a group of 5 AD for a long time. Who's going to say no? And for what it's worth, I think Scott Holman tweeted this out, very well put, but he completely passes the New Mexico is upset he's leaving them test, right? I have not seen anyone like good riddance at all, right? And in that way, because he's leaving a small program heading to a big program, this feels safe. And I understand that people wanted to take a more of a swing for the fences kind of thing as opposed to the safe pick. I would also point out that getting this pick wrong could set the entire program back decades, if not more. And I think it's very much that serious, if not more. And I understand why sometimes in that spot, you got to go safe, right? Yes, if you throw a touchdown, you might win the game. But if you kneel it and kick the field goal, go to overtime, right? I understand sometimes it's worth playing it safe. Sometimes it's not. Now, actually, when it comes to my coaching of football, my assistant would tell me I was a little bit too risk taking in those moments. But in these kind of situations, I get why you would play it safe. But other fears, right? The Power Four is big. Their schools are growing. It is unforgiving, right? The world has changed a lot in the 7 years since Eddie Nunez was at a Power Four institution. I think it's a lot of ways that he can play catch up. I'm not necessarily super worried about it, but that is something we need to make sure that he can do. Give him a 5-year contract. It's not a very long contract in terms of, I guess it's, it's not like exactly short either. But that's not a whole lot of adjustment period and adjustment time because to get extended at the back half of that, you got to kind of show some promise by the end of year 3, right? And that's 3 years from now. The Power Four is big, it's growing, and it's a whole different world in the next couple of years when the house settlement's finished and all of that, like things could be dramatically different. You could very realistically be like, okay, suddenly we're not just last in Power Five or in the Power Four, I should say, but we need to find another $20 million just to exist to pay athletes, right? Those things are going to happen. I also think that this 5-year contract is an interesting thing as far as fears go, because frankly, as critical as this moment is, if Houston just continues to get by over the course of 5 years and continue to get into the next step, whatever, as far as college athletics evolving, 5 years from now will also be a critical moment. 2029, you're going to be hearing people discussing what's happening in 2031, what's happening in 2034, all the TV contracts and the reshifting and the reorganization. 5 years from now, if you're doing this all over again, you could be in a spot where you don't have time to think about this, right? 5 years from now is a real interesting proposition, because that window does line up exactly with what could be the next major critical moment in college athletics. And if Houston wants to continue to be involved in major college athletics, Houston as well, right? I also think there's something to be said about making this hire and going back to the firing of Pesman and the first year of your head football coach. I've coached high school football for a while. I understand that football is in some ways another sport, but in an athletic director sense, it is the revenue sport, right? And so that's weirdly putting a lot of pressure on one another. Nunez needs to have a successful football season in terms of dollars and cents, because that's how he's going to hit the ground running in his job. Willie Fritz needs support from an athletic department, because that's how he's going to hit the ground running in his job. This could very well work together and kind of build each other up, but it also seems to be tugging at one another in some ways that you don't want each other to pull each other too much to the side. I get the read, again, based on everything you read about Nunez and Fritz both being just the best kinds of people, that this is going to work out okay. But I understand that fear as well. People pointing out they shouldn't have ever fired Pesman in Willie Fritz's first year, should have waited till January of next year, right? Like, fair criticism. We are here now, so I get why I had to hire someone, obviously, but fair criticism there. I also think it's interesting to talk about timelines. People point out that the firing of Pesman felt super rushed to start the summer. And now we're nearly 2 months later, and this hiring feels almost delayed. We've been hearing about Eddie Nunez as a favorite for a while. Shout out to Duarte for that reporting. But honestly, why did it take so long to get from there to here? If he was the favorite weeks ago, why didn't we hire him weeks ago? We are legitimately, when the announcement was made on Saturday afternoon, exactly 2 weeks from Houston playing UNLV in football. That's a big deal. You couldn't have used another week or two to help market the game. It's that all of those kinds of timelines feel awkward and a little janky. And I don't know what the cause is or what the thought is. If you do, tell me in the comments down below. If you have other thoughts on Nunez, tell me in the comments down below. We will continue to talk about Eddie as things continue to roll out from him over the course of the week. We'll also be talking about that Houston football game at UNLV very, very soon. We'll also be talking about a building basketball program looking to continue to work towards that inevitable national title at some point. Also building off of last year's Big 12 success. More news as it comes heading your way each and every day at Locked On Cougs. So make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you know we are live. If you're looking for a second listen of the day, first of all, thank you for making us first. But I want to recommend Locked On Big 12. Drake is doing a great job covering the conference head to toe, including who's in, who's out, previewing the fall, and more. So make sure to check out Drake Toll's Locked On Big 12. Locked On Cougs is a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Cougs.